There are so many gambits in chess. In this video, I'm going to show you how to play against the Budapest Gambit. So first question, what is it? Thanks to a subscriber for suggesting the Budapest Gambit. So here we go, the Budapest. d4, knight f6, c4 and e5 straight away. Black gives up a central pawn. Now, if you've never seen this before, this looks like it just chucks a pawn, but black wants to get some fast development, some active pieces. Now, the next move is knight g4. Black plans to get this pawn back straight away. So the first case I must talk about is, in this position, in this video, I'm going to suggest you capture the pawn, but what happens if you go d5? This is not a good move. The best way to play is to capture the pawn, but if you push, it looks okay, you get space, bishop c5, and already black has a great position, because black's bishop is amazing on c5. Let's say knight c3, d6. And a good move here is e3, which we are going to see later. This is going to be one of the many setups I suggest against the Budapest. If you go e4, getting 3 pawns in the center, this is not great. Actually, getting a lot of space is very bad for you. Knight g4, you now attack the f2 pawn. Knight h3, castle, and already black has a great position. Even f5 coming next. The rook can come in the game. So do not do any of this. Another thing I want to talk about is, in this position, we are going to look at an opening trap. Then I'm going to suggest a few setups. So let's say you take the pawn, they go knight g4 to get it back, bishop f4, this is going to be one setup we see later. A normal way to play. Then later I'm going to suggest a very aggressive way to play against the Budapest. Knight c6, you attack the pawn, knight f3, defend it, and now they go bishop b4 check. Why do people play like this? I mean, look how fast black's development is. The bishop is out, the 2 knights are out, you're going to castle, you're going to go queen e7 to get your pawn back. Knight d2. Later, I'm going to suggest knight c3. But what happens if knight d2? Here is an opening trap coming up. Queen e7, you get your pawn back. a3, you attack the bishop. And the cool thing is, black doesn't actually have to move the bishop. You take. And if you take the bishop, you have just lost in 8 moves. Yeah, 8 moves. Knight d3 is checkmate all of a sudden. Doesn't matter here if you take the knight, because you can still take back and we still have knight d3 mate. But what happens if you take this knight? You take with check first, and in my opinion this is a very, very boring position. You don't want to go for this. So later I'm going to suggest a few setups. Take, and I mean, nothing's happened. Nothing is going to happen in this position. So many pieces are off the board, don't go for this. So let's talk about this option. Firstly, let's go for the aggressive option. e5, take, knight g4. Now, in many blitz games, I've played bishop f4, but doing research for this subscriber has forced me to discover some aggressive lines. We're going to go knight f3 first. And if they go bishop c5, we go e3. We blunt this bishop. Let's say knight c6, this is what Budapest players do. They get their 2 knights out to get their pawn back. Knight c3. The cool thing is this knight is going to come into d5. If they take, and now f4. Bang. That knight, let's say, goes to g6. Now we can get our pieces out. We can go queen d3. The knight can actually sit on d5 to defend. e3. Let's say they castle, bishop d2, rook e8, putting pressure on here with the bishop and the rook, but you just castle, and here we go. Very aggressive setup. You can go e4, you can go h4, h5 to attack the knight. Get the bishop out. Now, I want to talk about bishop f4. Let's take it from here, bishop f4. Now, why do we do this? It's because if you play bishop c5 now, you can go e3. You have got the bishop outside the pawn chain. That's why it's actually important in this line, if you go for it, to play the bishop out first. But you can see the previous line was very aggressive. Now, I'm going to show you this line because I've played it a few times. So now black normally goes knight c6 because it doesn't actually make sense anymore for them to play bishop c5. knight f3, and now they go bishop b4 check. We're not going to do this because e3. If queen here, queen d5. We actually find 3 ways to defend the pawn. We are going to kick the knight away. So bishop c5 doesn't make sense anymore. So that's why they normally go bishop b4 check. Now in the previous section I showed knight d2 and we had that opening trap. I'm going to suggest knight c3 because I've played it before. Let's say they double your pawns and now you go queen e7. 1, 2, 3. But hey, you've got 2 on it. So now you get a third piece on it with queen d5. You defend your pawn. One normal way for black to react is to play f6 to break up the structure, but I'm going to show you queen a3 first, because this is a tricky move, because they're going after the c3 pawn. And it looks like if you move the rook, they can take this pawn. But that is exactly what I'm going to suggest you do. If you play a move like queen d2, you get this very, very strange case of a repetition, and you do not want to go for this. Black is back to attacking that pawn 3 times, so we have this. And I mean, there's no point going for a draw. You've got the white pieces, you've got to fight for an advantage. They attack the pawn, you defend it with rook c1. Bishop defends the rook. Now, you do lose this pawn, but this knight is now offside. Just kick it away. Knight h6. Do you take it? No. This knight is so bad, it doesn't matter. Let's go g4. I've had this position in probably at least 2 blitz games. g4 restricts this knight coming in the game. You're going to get the bishop out, and then you're going to castle. This knight can come in the center as well. So it's just a huge position. Going back a few moves here, one of the best ways for black to react is actually to come to terms with the fact that he's not going to get his pawn back. They play f6. Now, why do they sacrifice a pawn? It's because you're going to play h3 next. Then the knight is going to go to h6, so you need to get the knight back in the game. If you play h3 now, they can take. So we don't want that. Take. Now we are up a pawn and we go queen d3. So these 2 pawns are doubled, but you have a queen sitting well on d3 defending both pawns. d6, g3, we get the bishop out to g2 and we can castle and we are safe. Knight e4, castle. They can get the bishop out, f5, g4. You can actually sit the queen on e3 if knight c5, queen e3. Offering a trade, you are happy to do that because you are pawn up. If they don't trade, you can put the knight on d4. The bishop is now very well placed. And even though white has doubled pawns, well, I would rather have double pawns and be a pawn up. The rook can also sit on b1, the rook can go to d1. White has a nice position. Let's take it from the top again. We have the Budapest here, we're going to take, and we can go knight c3. This move, it might put your opponent off, because normally you're going to see knight f3, or bishop f4. I mean, normally you're going to play it to defend the pawn, right? But you don't need to. That's the cool thing. You just say knight c3. So let's say you go knight c6 first. It doesn't really matter. You are attacking the pawn twice. e3. Attacking this knight. Let's say they take, and now f4. Here we go again, but a little bit different. Knight g6, bishop out. Let me explain every arrow. This knight can sit on d5. Very well placed in the center, and I said this before, when the knight is on d5, it actually defends e3. This queen can come out to h5, and you can castle. So something like this. Bishop c5, attacking this weak pawn, right? Wrong, it's not weak. Queen h5. This knight is going to sit here. Let's say they go d6 and castle, and we can play this aggressive position. Knight d5, knight f3, bishop can come out to d3. You can even play knight f3 first, just to stop the queen coming out to h4, and then castle. Very, very aggressive way to play. Just want to talk about one other point. This is a bonus aggressive setup, you could say, because it's so weird. I only found this out thanks to the subscriber for suggesting to analyze the Budapest Gambit. I do read all the comments, so please leave your suggestions in the comments below, and it's possible I can make a future video covering that opening, or going through one of your games. If you go knight c3, now knight takes e5, and this is a cool way to play, isn't it? b3, wow. I only found this out researching. Bishop b4. Is black doing very well? Yes and no. Bishop b2. Castle e3. So now what? Well, we have this move again. e3 is the move you want to play if you want to blunt this bishop. Normally it's on c5, but it's about blunting this dark squared bishop. So what happens now? You're going to go queen c2, knight f3, and you're going to castle. This is a very aggressive way to play. Knight c6, queen out. Or even this, knight f3, because if they take, you take. Queen c2, rook g1, castle. And when that happens, this knight is no longer pinned, so you can go knight d5. This is another aggressive option. Let's talk about the psychology of the Budapest Gambit. Now, when you are playing Blitz online, you may not know your opponent plays the Budapest. So if you are not feeling confident, you can just stop it on move 2. Done. Now your opponent cannot try this tricky gambit, because if they go e5, you take with the knight. You're just a pawn up. Even better, you know what? If you're not feeling confident, just go knight f3 on move 1. They can't go Budapest anymore. They can't go e5. I mean, if they play d6, well, then it's a totally different opening. They cannot go for the Budapest. Before we end the video, here is another opening trap. Now, this isn't the Budapest Gambit. It's got another name, but I can't remember the pronunciation of it, and I'm not going to try. e5 take, knight e4. The point of putting the knight on e4 is they want to go bishop b4 check. Swap a few pieces off, go knight c6, queen e7, get the pawn back. And the cool move here is you stop it straight away. It's not actually a wasted move when you play a3. Because this check, it is such a problem. Knight c6, they attack the pawn, you defend, and queen c2 is actually a key move in these lines, to attack the knight. And already, white's got a great position. Queen c2 is the key move to remember. For example, if they go d6, queen c2. Bishop f5. Nothing to worry about. Knight c3. If they take, you take this bishop. It's a weird move. And you may be asking, why not knight g3, attacking the rook, defending the bishop, which is attacking the queen? You go e4. Take, take. And this knight is not getting out. I've had this once before in a blitz game. What I did was I got the bishop out, I castled, I got this bishop out, and then I got the knight back. Also, I mean, white's got great pieces anyway. A couple of pawns here, the knight can sit in the middle. Going back a few moves, they can play d6 straight away, but if they do that, you can go queen c2 anyway. And we have the same trap. Bishop f5, knight c3. Knight g3, e4, same thing. It's basically the same thing. We trap this knight, it looks so weird. But when you get this knight back, you've got two minor pieces for the rook. I hope I've given you many suggestions to how to play against the Budapest. Please give this video a like because it really does help out the channel. Thanks to a subscriber for suggesting the Budapest. I do read all the comments, so if you've got suggestions, let me know in the comments below. What openings do you want to see in future videos? What gambits or refutations to their gambits do you want to see? Also, I'm building a community, so if you want your games analysed, post it below. I'll see what I can do and they can go into future videos. Subscribe and press the bell so then you'll get notified when I release a new one. If you guys want to stick around, I've got a couple of suggestions over here. For an opening with white, how to play the Catalan. For an opening with black, how to play the Caro-Kann. Thanks for watching.